Welcome to Distinctly Well. I'm your host, Leo Tonkin. And in each episode, we engage in insightful and distinct conversations with a variety of experts, innovators, thought leaders, and friends, exploring what it truly means to live and be well in all facets of life. Let's explore, learn, and grow together. Welcome to Distinctly Well. Hi, everybody. I'm Leo Tonkin, and welcome to Distinctly Well. I'm very excited about today's conversation. Travel has been a passion of my life and have had amazing experiences traveling around the world, the country. Back in 1980, I rode my bike from Fort Lauderdale to San Francisco, and I saw the country for the first time. And that was pretty amazing. And now you start thinking about travel and how do we travel well? So our guest today is Sallie Fraenkel, and I want to welcome Sallie to Distinctly Well. She's had an amazing career. Before the travel, she was, for a couple decades, she ran the home entertainment division for Showtime, and then has migrated into somewhat the spa space, the wellness space. She's on the board of the Transformational Travel Council, a member of the Global Wellness Institute Wellness Tourism Initiative. She's an advisory for Green Spa Network, which I participated in. It's a great organization. I'm a member of the New York Spa, advisory member of One Well World, and then it goes on. And now the advisory board of VacateU. So if we're going to talk about travel well, we got the right guest, and I really appreciate you coming on board, Sallie.
Oh, thank you, Leo. And it's funny you say that, you're passionate about travel because, of course, I am super passionate about travel. And it's funny when you say in 1980, you biked from Fort Lauderdale to San Francisco, it brings me back to one of my earliest travel experiences, which I decided when I graduated from high school. Actually, it was my senior year that I would organize a senior trip for a group of us to Bermuda. And I mean, even back then, I've often identified myself as what I would call a lay travel agent, even though I have zero interest in being a travel agent. But I've always loved travel and crafting, curating and creating those kind of experiences for others as well as myself.
I think when I first met you, you were doing things like that for excursions, if you will, before conferences or after. I know for the Global Wellness Institute and the summit and things of that nature. And you're doing all kinds of things that we'll dive into. But, to get us started, you hear this word wellness in so many contexts nowadays. And, you've got wellness tourism, you've got people that are doing wellness travel. What does that mean to you when people are using those words and saying those things?
Well, it's interesting that you asked that because one of the things that really fueled my interest and sort of my involvement in wellness travel and wellness tourism was I was involved in the inaugural research that was done by the Global Wellness Summit. A little known fact, this was done by the Global Wellness Summit in 2013. And for those who may not know, the Global Wellness Summit is a conference that takes place. It moves around the world every year, and it brings together thought leaders that work in various aspects of the wellness industry, the spa industry, hospitality, beauty, and many other kind of industries now. But back in 2013, the term wellness tourism didn't exist. What we did was we basically defined what that means. And the definition was traveling for the purpose of improving, enhancing, or maintaining your health and well-being. So improving is one way, that's one form of wellness travel. Maintaining is, the sustaining of your well-being, your wellness. And of course, so you can improve, you can maintain, you can, and these were how the lens through which we looked at wellness tourism. So, of course, the term wellness tourism is an industry-facing term, and what the end user, the guest, the client, if you will, would be doing is wellness travel. So 2013, we did that research, and among the notable aspects of that were that, people who travel this way, who are wellness travelers, really are a very, very valuable tourism sector. So,
Mm.
whenever research is done and it gives shape to something, that helps legitimize and push it forward. So, being involved in that research, then I really saw an even greater opportunity than I had seen the prior 9 years where I had actually been working in this area, but it wasn't called that yet.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting. So, I've traveled. I'm fortunate when I've had the opportunity to travel, and when I travel, wellness wasn't necessarily on my mind where we decided to go or
No,
what we
it's not
wanted to
always
do.
on your mind.
It
Right.
was more, but in a sense it is. I know you have an organization called Mind, Body, Spirit. And, you know, when you think about it, one of the reasons why you do vacation or you go is for recreation or recreate. You go to
That's
kind of
right.
renew or to, put sort of life on hold and kind of be present to other things. And so the context, if you will, when you start looking at making choices for
Mhm.
where you travel,
Mhm.
becomes a different distinction in a sense. And I think it's interesting that, now you got a lot more, obviously, since the pandemic, people being focused on self care or to your point, maintaining, where you've been in certain rituals or practices, and then you go away. Why have a break in that? So, is that part of what you're looking at in terms of what that wellness means when you're
Yeah.
traveling?
Yes, let me explain to you a few things because I think the concept of wellness travel can be very elusive to many people. Okay. So, first of all, just like wellness, wellness is different things to different people. So, Leo Tonkin's definition of wellness is going to be different than Sally Frankel's. So, there is an objective measure of whether you're well or not, because many would say the absence of disease would be, wellness if you look at a spectrum. But the way in which I maintain my wellness, my well-being is the state that I achieve through these wellness activities or things that I do is very different. So the way that I exercise is probably different than you, or what I eat, the kind of foods, the amount of sleep, my spiritual practices, all of the various areas that map to wellness are going to be deeply personal, but they do fall into or can be mapped into, Leo, different kind of categories.
Yeah.
So when you talk about wellness travel, I like to explain it as somewhat of a lifestyle. The wellness traveler is values the wellness lifestyle. So what does that mean that you value the wellness lifestyle? It means you care about your wellness. Doesn't mean when I go on vacation, I'm not gonna, have a couple of cocktails or maybe eat
Right.
some ice cream, or, it's not
Right.
like about, being perfect, and never deviating from very rigid standards of, wellness. And by the way, I would say that, who is one to set the standard? We each set
Right.
our own standards. We each know if we tap into it, what's going to make us most well. But there's lots of different kinds of wellness travel experiences out there. So I can give you a few different
Yeah.
examples that will help bring it to life, and
Yeah.
that will define
Yeah,
it
if you
for me.
could, because as you're speaking, I think about some of my travels. And in a sense, if I look at through it from the lens of wellness, I do a lot of hiking and walking. And I love inquiries, which is what we're doing. I love adventure and
Sure,
exploring
yeah,
and
yeah,
curiosity and learning about other cultures.
absolutely.
And for me, that's when you talk about the mind,
Yes,
and there's a different relationship you have to your well-being, if you will, right?
yes, yes.
So, so give us some examples of some of the things that you were about to say. Yeah.
Okay. So I will give you a few examples. And a lot of this, I worked at Spa Finder, a company called Spa Finder, for a very long time. Probably a lot of people in the industry know that company. And, we spent a lot of time categorizing experiences. It's kind of funny how people, that happens a lot in a lot of industries, hospitality, it's 5 star, it's 4 star, it's 3 star, what does that mean? Well, same thing in the wellness travel. So we would start with, and I'm going to use a term we used, really for a long time, a destination spa. Now, a destination spa, another more current term, because these terms change, would be an immersive wellness resort, let's say.
So like
So
Canyon Ranch So,
Absolutely. Canyon Ranch, Amiraval, Rancho La Puerta, Shivasam in Thailand, or Kamalaya in Thailand, or Ananda in the Himalayas. And those are just some examples of very ones that have been around for a very long time that are very well established. What makes it a destination spa or an immersive wellness retreat or experience is that everyone is there for the same purpose. They're not going to do it all the same way. They're not going to
right.
eat the same meal, but they're all there. It is a destination spa. You're going there for the destination. It's often all inclusive or almost all inclusive. And you really are there to focus on your well-being. Now, I'll give you a contrast. A contrast would be you're going on vacation. Let's say my husband and I, we're going to go on vacation to the Caribbean in February. Now, I am absolutely a wellness lifestyle person. I value my wellness lifestyle and don't want to get too far away from maintaining my health and well-being. So we're going to Grenada. So I find a place where we can do a little hiking. They have yoga there. Not that I do yoga every day, but I like the idea that I can do yoga on vacation. They have meditation. They have a spa with Balinese inspired spa treatments. Already booked those. And they have, of course, incredible access to nature. So you could be on the beach. I mean, what makes you feel better than, breathing in, the salt air or being in the sunshine, vitamin D. So to me, that's like a resort wellness vacation.
Gotcha.
Okay. So it's not a
Yeah.
destination. And then there are, lots of other kind of experiences. I mean, I had an amazing experience just several months ago at a medical spa in Italy that was absolutely off the charts around longevity. And a really, really credible medical orientation, but it wasn't only medical, functional medicine focused. It was functional medicine meets traditional Chinese medicine. So it was very, in some ways, yin and yang, like that very, like that whole TCM part
Yeah.
that can be, with the more Western medical part.
Yeah.
That's another kind of wellness travel experience.
Now that I'm aging and hopefully aging well, I'm in my second marriage, and Lori and I have been together now for 8 years, married for 6 years.
Uh-huh.
And, when we choose to travel, and now it's funny, she's now become a bit of a travel agent as a hobby, and you really get to see, how do you organize these events? She looks and researches the hotels and the places and the tours and the best restaurants to go to.
Absolutely.
Eating well is always part of it.
Is very important. Mm-hmm.
Activities, hiking, what's around. And I think the industry is paying attention to that. People want to be able to have the right type of amenities or the right type of surroundings. And from an industry perspective, I know we're seeing that at Salt Chamber. You mentioned Kamalaya. I met them at the Synergy event last year in Ibiza, and recently got an email that we're moving forward and doing a really cool salt room there for them. And they're one of those destination focused on wellness from a different perspective. But what are you seeing is some of these, like what's changing and evolving in the industry now, especially what you've seen over the years?
Well, one of the changes that's really big, and you just brought Synergy into the conversation. I'm intricately involved with Synergy, the retreat show. And while retreats have existed for quite a long time, the popularity and what I would even say the mainstreaming of retreats is really coming on strong. And once upon a time, for me, when I would think about a retreat, it would almost always be a yoga retreat or meditation retreat. I mean, those were the categories.
Or corporate retreats. I was involved in doing corporate retreats. A little bit different.
Yeah, and I went on a few of those, but to me, I would have called those boondoggles. So, I mean, to me, that was just like a great excuse that they would take us away to drink a bunch of alcohol, play tennis, and golf. And
Exactly.
But anyway, it didn't feel like a retreat in the sense that there was a lot of facilitated, aspects to
Right.
But yes, no, but that's a really great example of how, the word retreat,
Yeah.
how all of these terms are used. But now, retreats, there's so many different versions of retreats. I mean, there are, I don't know, like horseback riding retreats and menopause retreats and grief retreats and men's specifically focusing on men, of course, but
Right.
men's retreats dealing just with men's, issues. And there's just like such a broad, spectrum now of retreats that are
Right.
being created. And I find that very fascinating. I think the reason I find it fascinating is because by definition, I mean, there are some solo retreats, but the vast, vast, vast majority are bringing groups of people together. And
Yeah.
that's the part that I kind of find really interesting, that, there's a cohesive thread connecting people around these themes, and these experiences. And I think there's something to that, bringing people together in a group setting.
Yeah, when you're intentional about it, typically when you travel, you meet people and it's kind of fun to kind of go with the flow a certain way. But when it's intentional, I know when I
Well,
was at
they're cool.
Synergy,
They're very, there's an objective. Yes, when you say intentional.
yeah, when it's
Never-
intentional,
Yes.
and when they have rituals and you participate, I've been at facilities and in the hospitality where out in Phoenix at the I think it was the JW Marriott,
Mhm.
we were doing a site visit, and they did a tequila ritual at a certain
Oh,
time.
I was at
Or
Chalet in Mexico. That was
yeah,
very, yeah.
right, where you drink your cacao, or you have
Oh, yeah, we
different.
just did that. We just did that in Bacalar in Mexico.
Yeah,
And I create my own retreats,
yeah,
with Wendy Bosalavich, who's, I am partnered with.
at the
And
Red Bird House, we put a plug in there, but
thank
but it fits that's something you would be doing. You're creating a beautiful space
yeah,
that can accommodate folks for that purpose, as
yeah,
well as just rent it out and have a.
yeah,
I mean,
a
you have
relax.
some really cool wellness amenities in there. Not to
And
give
we
a
have a
plug.
salt. We have a
You have a,
salt.
you have a salt booth there. You have a sauna and a lot of other things.
It's
But
fabulous.
but
Yeah.
that's part of what's happening in the industry, right? You have at the very small level with Furmo and Airbnb, where when people are choosing where to go, they're looking for these wellness things, these modalities. And when you look at the larger picture, as you're talking about, so groups are looking at going to these kinds of places, it
Yes.
seems.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, so far it appears that way. That's what we're seeing specifically. Yeah. So, from a trend point of view, there's a few things that I am seeing. I'm almost hesitant to bring them up because I'm going to try to create some things around this next year. So I can't decide if I should actually share
Well,
or keep it.
by the time, I mean, this is timeless to a degree. So, we're getting ready. Listen, next year is the year of the dragon.
Is it?
Okay.
And
Yeah.
what does that mean that it's the year of the dragon?
So the year of the
What-
dragon is about prosperity and good fortune. It really is. I mean, it's, it's for me anyways, at 12 years ago, the Chinese zodiac is every 12 years. I,
Right
s-
on.
I started Salt Chamber in 2012. So next year will be the 12th year, which is the year of the dragon. So it's going to be a good year. And I
Good.
think when you look at the trend, well, I think for everybody, the wellness industry is growing. We just
Oh,
came back
yeah.
from the
And
global.
wellness travel is booming.
Yeah.
I mean, of course, that makes total sense because we had a few years with COVID where, even if we want, there were some places open, but it was particularly very, very challenging. But I mean, the outlook for wellness tourism is incredibly bright. And wellness tourism, actually, Leo, also extends to destinations.
Mhm.
So, talk about properties, but what a lot of people don't know, or especially travelers, is there were a lot of countries, regions, locations that embrace a wellness tourism strategy. I mean, that's how important they consider it to be. And then and then that plays out in different experiences and ways in destinations. But another very, very big trend, and I think it would be remiss not to bring this up a little bit, and I'm not an expert in this, but is the idea of sustainable and regenerative travel, which, I have talked about for a long time, but, you cannot travel well, whatever that means, and think about our planet.
Yeah.
And Not to say, people are still going to fly. I mean, that's here to stay, but the relationship we have to communities we visit, the impact we have on places we go. I mean, this is very important and will
Yeah.
become more and more a part of the conversation.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you brought it up. I chair the Respiratory Wellness Initiative for the Global
Yeah.
Wellness
Mm,
Institute. And
yeah.
when you look at things like air quality, you look at sanitation, you look at, are you contributing back to the community, to your point? I think it's more top of mind. I think that's part of what people are thinking about when they travel.
And if they're not, they need to be. They really need to be. I mean, and you can do it in a small way. I want to give you one example. This
Mhm.
was so among the many things that I have done, I didn't even know this was the term, but I was a private tour operator for a period of time. I learned that that's what I was. So I was creating these wellness journeys for groups. Okay. This was when right after I started my business, which was 9 years ago, right after I left Spotify during the Global Wellness Summit. So I put together a trip to Guatemala. I had been on a conference, fallen in love with Guatemala, met a guy there who kind of was a guide for me and my friend. And I said, "Do you want to create a trip with me?" He's like, "Sure." So we create this trip to Guatemala. And I say to him, there really has to be a give back component. Turns out he was involved with this incredible NGO based in a remote part of Guatemala called San Juan de Comalapa. So, he takes me there for a site visit, and it's a very, very rural community, extremely poor. And what this project is all about that we go to, that's called Long Way Home, is they're building an entire school out of garbage.
Mhm. Very
The
cool.
reason for this is he takes me into town. In this town, they throw all the garbage into this gigantic hole in the ground, like a dump. It was shocking to see the amount of garbage that was in there. And of course, they're running out of space for the garbage. I mean, that's where it goes. So this group of people, mostly local, but with some Peace Corps, ex-Peace Corps young people, create this way of building a school utilizing all this garbage, which was just incredible. Anyway, it was so inspiring to me. So I took a group of Americans there. When I say the place we stayed was a hotel that's being,
Right.
it was a life altering experience, but it was a life altering experience to learn and understand. Prior to that, I never thought about garbage.
Yeah.
I just, in my American view, garbage men come and pick up your garbage and take it away. I mean, that was my first,
Yeah.
in this about 9 years ago, 8 years ago, my first introduction to the fact that we need to think about these things, the air, air quality, water quality, waste disposal, the impact we're having on our world.
It is. I mentioned that bike ride, and the purpose of it was bringing, this is back in 1980, it was about bringing awareness about world hunger. And it was prior to Live Aid. And so a
Yeah.
lot of the things that we were doing is bringing awareness. And after that, I moved to Denver, started a nonprofit organization with a woman I met on the bike ride. And then we traveled throughout India, especially Calcutta and then Bangladesh, to actually research hunger and where we could have locals get the resources they needed to be self-sustaining for themselves.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Salt Chamber for many years has been involved with One Tree Planted. So wherever we are doing, selling some of our products, we're planting 1,000 trees for every project around and doing reforestation. And so I think
Wow.
having a purpose really
Yes.
makes a difference.
And not just having a purpose, recognizing that we have a responsibility.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not going to jump so far up on my soapbox, but I do feel when we talk about traveling and wellness travel, that having some awareness about the destination we're visiting,
Yeah.
and a lot of these places anyway, they in of themselves, the Kamalayas of the world, the Rancho La Puertas, they have deep roots in their communities and they care very deeply about sustainability and the environment. So it's choosing, like, learning a little bit about where you're going and what their values are,
Yeah.
and not just being an unconscious traveler. So, I mean, being a little bit more of a conscious traveler
Yep.
to me is also a part of traveling well.
Yeah. And I want to caution people too, not to think that it's just somewhere over there. It's even in our own local communities.
Oh,
of
absolutely.
where we
Yeah,
are right today
of
and
course.
how we contribute back with the community. Is that
Yeah.
part of what the Transformational Travel Council is about?
Well, the Transformational Travel Council, I love this organization. It's a relatively nascent organization. It's really about what it is using travel as a catalyst for change. Okay. But the whole premise with the Transformational Travel Council, and it does very much intersect with sustainable and regenerative travel, but it's really at their core, they're about education. So they educate people in the travel industry on how to design transformational travel experiences, but they also work with destinations with a destination program. How do you become more transformational and regenerative? And the reality, and this is always the truth, it's an inside job. So it starts inside before
Yeah.
you go outside.
Yeah.
So the idea behind the Transformational Travel Council, it draws from a lot of different people's work, but the one that comes most top of mind is, Joseph Campbell and the Hero's Journey, but many other works that have, talk about how do you have to change yourself in order to change the things outside of you. So in other words, no matter what you say or I say, if you don't care about the rest of the world, you don't care about the rest of the world. But many of us in the wellness world really do care about the inner part, not just
Yeah.
the outer part.
Oh,
Yeah.
very well said. And I'm glad we're able to bring attention to it. It's something, we just have to be more, it really is awareness, and intention on what you're up to. I mean, I've never been on a cruise. So,
Never.
well, I've been,
Never.
never, I live in Florida, never gone. To me, being on a large ship out to sea with thousands of people was not something that I was gravitating to. And
my grandmother took me and my sister when we were 20 on a cruise. Oh my God. I have to say it was quite a trip.
Yes. Well, Lori and I, when we first met, we went on a couple of longboat river cruises over in Europe, and that was an
That is
amazing
considered
experience.
a cruise,
Yes.
Leo. In the travel space,
Yes.
they do, it's just like going to a spa.
Right.
It's like a destination spa versus a resort spa, hotel spa. A cruise is a cruise. You didn't go on a big ship cruise.
No. So because she's now working in her business, Travel Well by Lori, she's been kind of getting some of the perks. So we're going on one next week. And, it's kind of like, well, what's the intent? I mean, often you go and you just have a good time and everything, but
Of course you can.
it's the first of the year. It's like kind of a planning our relationship. What are we up to for the year? And kind of not think about things and kind of experience it. So I'm going in with an open mind and looking to have fun.
That's very wise. I think any travel experience that's going to be successful should be viewed through a lens of open-mindedness, curiosity. I mean, if you go in with and this really speaks to connecting into community, connecting into the self, connecting into planet, all the aspects that I think are really important in wellness travel and certainly in the experiences I create. Openness, kindness, and curiosity go a long way.
I love people watching. I love connecting. You never know who you're going to meet.
Yeah, of course.
And you do feel that when you travel around, you get, on one hand, we're all the same at some point. We are one tribe.
We are human.
Where, you look at the humanity of it all. So you do get different perspectives and different.
You might like your cruise.
I know. We're going to have some fun.
Michael and I have been on not several cruises, just the two of us, but some with the in-laws, like,
The family.
And smaller ones in the Galapagos. There's
Right.
the only way to really go see the Galapagos Islands is on a
Right.
ship of some kind.
Right.
There are definitely, not all cruises are created equal.
No.
So I hope when you go on is satisfying.
Back of my mind is, I have 4 grandkids now, so it's like, there's
Disney
this,
too.
It's one thing going to Disney World. Yeah.
Disney World is, I'm not going to get on the Disney cruise subject because we're talking about wellness travel. And honestly, I can't say too many wellness oriented things about the Disney cruise.
Get you. The kids, wellness for the kids maybe, but anyhow.
I'm not even sure about that.
Yeah.
But we all have an opinion.
It's interesting. And so, So what is it that you like to do when you travel? Well, I know you've been through all these experiences. Everybody has their definition.
I am a really I guess I would describe myself as a kind of a broad traveler. So the way in and what does that really mean? So I mean, I like a lot of variety. I just took a really big trip just about 10 months ago and to Bhutan. And that to me was like the epitome of a wellness travel experience because the entire country of Bhutan is a model for so many things, from a values point of view. But
Yeah.
then I also, I mean, went to where, oh my goodness, that medical spa I told you about, Palace Murano, which was just incredible, and went to Habitas and Bacalar, and just, experiencing the cacao ceremony there and the Temescal. I had done this before in Mexico, but
Hmm.
to try to experience indigenous treatments when I go to various places.
Yeah.
So that for me, for wellness, from a wellness travel point of view, in Bhutan, and I like to learn about them. So in Bhutan, they have an indigenous treatment called a datso. I don't even know if I'm pronouncing it correctly,
Hmm.
datso. And it is similar in some ways to something I've experienced in Japan, but in the villages, or in the rural areas, they build these tubs out of wooden boxes. And then, like, I don't even remember what the bottom is. I guess the whole thing is wood. And then there's I don't, it's hard to describe. There's a little section that's sectioned off where they put all the water in the box, and then they put the hot stones in the section. And then there's like a little door that they open, and then all the hot water comes rushing in from these hot stones that are heated in a fire. And this is, so it's,
Yeah.
I
Cool.
guess you might call it hydrotherapy if you're going
Right.
into the spa term, but it's totally authentic. And we experienced this at a couple of hotels. I didn't do it by the roadside, like out in the open, but this was incredible. These datsos, and then they float. Oh my God, different. I can't even remember the name of. They take the plants, certain plants. I have this all written down. It's hard to retain.
Right.
Certain plants that they pick the leaves off the trees and they throw that into the water. And that, of course, like releases, everything has a purpose and a reason.
Right.
And
Interesting.
and they keep bringing more and more rocks. So they ask after a period of time, you're lying in this hot water. Do you want it hotter? Do you want it hotter? Do you want it hotter? It's a little like the sauna concept, till the point where the water is so hot, like you're
Right.
dripping sweat, and like, but I loved it because I happen to love hot baths, and I had never experienced that anywhere else in the world. So,
Hmm.
for me, that was like very exciting.
Yeah.
Then I experienced for the first time at Palace Murano, I did things I'd never done before. I did a plasma ozone treatment, and I'm not a big one for needles. So, this is, they take your blood out and then they spin it in a centrifuge with oxygen, and they put it back in. But it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I try to remain open minded. So, I'm always looking to, wherever I go, what is something that I can learn about the culture? What can I experience? And even, from a wellness point of view, food wise, there's always foods to experience and other cultural rituals, like you said. And that for me,
Yeah.
I love that stuff. So
Yeah.
I'm not sure I answered your
No,
question
you did.
directly.
I mean, that's how you travel. I gravitate to the same thing. I'm glad we're having this conversation. I think, for a lot of people, they're choosing their experiences differently than they used to. I kind of, when you look at today's travel consumers, and you look at it from a business point of view, and I know you have a lot of background in the marketing.
Mhm.
How do you see the industry kind of growing in that space? Are you seeing more marketing? Are you seeing, are there challenges that they're facing, in reaching those travel consumers to educate them about this? Or, how do you see
Yeah.
that evolving?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a huge challenge to explain the offerings that exist out there. And if I had to say one thing that I love doing and that I think that I'm somewhat good at doing, is explaining the differences in the wellness travel experiences. So you talked about the fact that your wife is a travel agent. I've worked with many travel agents and trained them on how to sell wellness travel. But what that really means is, first of all, how do you find the wellness traveler? Once you find the wellness traveler, how do you find, and, so that's a marketing function. How do you
Yeah.
find that wellness traveler? Now, once you find that wellness traveler, how do you find out what that traveler wants? That begins the sales process. And once you find what this traveler wants, how do you find the perfect, places for them and get them to book? So, so it's a marketing to sales challenge. And part of it is just a communications issue. I don't think most people are able to articulate the different wellness travel experiences that exist out there.
Yeah, to me, that's part of why I love the word distinctions, because people don't distinguish what those are. And if you can make those distinctions so somebody can really understand, then
Yes.
they have different ways that they make choices.
Yes.
And if you can do that, that serves the guest or the consumer, then it's a clunk, right? It's a done deal.
It's a two-part process. And I know you're a coach, and I think, I'm a coach too, or, I've had coaching training and certified. But part of this is about asking the right questions, listening well, and then having the knowledge to give the answers to the questions you've asked people.
Yeah.
So Leo, what are you looking for on this vacation? What's most important to you? You start with very basic things. Where do you want to go? When do you want to go? Those kind of things, hone in. But if you're talking to someone about a wellness travel experience, you ask questions about what aspects of wellness are important to them.
Yeah, no, very clear, very clear. So
Yeah.
so I know we're winding down. What's next for Sallie? What are you up to next?
Well, I'm working on our next wellness weekend retreat at Redbird House, which is called Mind, Body, Spirit Camp, which is May 17th to 19th, just in the midst of designing it, which is a very fun, creative process.
Yeah.
I'm working on Synergy, the retreat show for next year, which is in Bali. And I could not be more excited because I've never been to Bali.
Right.
And I'm working right now on planning a trip of my own. The Transformational Travel Council is hosting their conference in a very remote part of Brazil. That's challenging me quite a bit to try to figure this out. But working on a trip to Brazil for April that will have some pre and post elements to it so that I can experience part of this, the Pantanal of Brazil. And
very cool. Well, I know that people listening, I mean, there's so many different ways. I teased before about corporate retreats, but I think you're starting to look at workplace wellness differently. And
yes.
I'm committed, because of my organizational and culture work, think that there's going to be more of a merging of making corporate retreats not about the golfing and the partying and that, but that there's a real intention on the well-being of the leadership, of the management of a company. And I think that is another episode that I have about, corporate wellness. And I know that Mind, Body, Spirit, your business, mindbodyspiritnet.com, that part of what your business is putting these things together. So for those listening, and
love to put one together with you, Leo.
I know.
Well,
I know we're going to do work together, and I'm very excited that you been on the show. I think it's great to make these distinctions about what wellness travel and what a well traveler is all about. And this is an episode about travel well, and who best to be the host, the guest on the show is Sallie Fraenkel. And I just thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you, Leo. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for joining us in this episode of Distinctly Well. For all the show notes and resources mentioned in this episode, head over to distinctlywell.com. Be sure to subscribe to the show to never miss an episode, and check out the video version of each episode over on YouTube. Thanks for tuning in. Until next time, live distinctly, live well.